shadow in the government's game. Pawn as a child with no face and no name. They stole my past to leave me cold and alone. Always searching for a place that could call home. I was lost in the dark, just a tool in the hand, till she pulled me close and helped me understand. Now the fire inside is starting to rise. I can see the truth through 1,000 lies. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. In the dead of the night, I can hear the call. All the ghosts of my past scratching through the wall. My eyes change colors, the power has grown. With Crowley the hound, I'm never alone. I used to be hollow, a man made of glass, but now I am reclaiming every year that has passed. Every memory is falling right back into place. I know every name and I remember every face. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I ain't running no more, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Gonna settle that debt in the depth of the night. They tried to break me, they tried to erase, but they can't hide the blood from the scars on my face. The veil is thin and the engine is hot. I'm taking back everything that they thought I forgot. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I remember it all now. Every single face, I'm calling for you in the dead of the night.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Henry. Tonight, we're going to go back into my past, and this is number 24. Episode 24. Well, I'd had about a 2-week break coming, so I got to go home and try to relax as much as possible. Try to forget temporarily what I'd been doing, because project life and home life were two separate entities. I had to live a double life. When I was home, I tried to be just an all-American boy, but in the projects, I was being groomed to be a super soldier, use my abilities to get the upper hand, keep things in check. But it was a long process getting me to the point to where they could actually put me in the military and carry out some of these deeds. And I always worked with a select few people that they hand-picked for me to be around. But anyway, back at the home, like I said, I spent 2 weeks just doing what I wanted to do. Fish, hunt, go out hiking in the woods, just enjoy nature and try to forget all the craziness. Even for me, with the abilities that I have, project life was crazy as hell. It was a total different horse. Now, when I was at the projects, I had to forget about home life. Wasn't allowed to dwell on it. In there, I was their asset, their tool, their creation. And yes, I said creation. If you listen to my other videos, I wasn't born, I was created. I don't know what all they put in that damn milkshake, but whatever it was, it ended up being me. And they added 2 more spirits. One spirit they added, which would have been the third one. The first one was put in me right around the time they started forming me. Well, then later come the other 2, which were 2 uncles. So I carry memories and things that they seen. I also carry some from this old man. At any given time, in less than a blink of an eye, I need help, I could call, and these 3, one of the 3 would step forward, take care of whatever it is, or walk me through the problem, give me an answer, fix something that need to be handled quick. But anyway, I'm going to try to explain a little more about some of the things and how they was having me do it. Now, the funny thing is, back in those days, they had these huge computers. I mean, went from like the floor to the ceiling and down one whole wall. Of course, nowadays, hell, a computer can be a watch phone. It could be your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet. But things were different back in those days. Now, I was finally getting old enough, learning enough of the ropes, and not very many times was I prone to bucking, the system they had going, periodically, but usually when it involved me getting hurt. So they started giving me more of a workload and an understanding of what was expected. Now, there was many different ways that you could travel through a portal, through a Jacob's ladder, create a tearing fabric of time and space. I learned how to use all these. And the reason being, when you're out there, just say you're sent to a certain place to handle a situation. Whatever that situation may be, I don't want to say too much about that because YouTube might give me a strike on that, and that wouldn't do me no good. But anyway, there's many different ways of bending the frame. Now, just say you was at point A and you wanted to go to point B. One way is you bring the 2 times together. Then you fold them over and you just slide through. That's a short, easy answer. And over the years, there had been people that figured out how to do this. And, as you well may guess, or you may know, because they wasn't working for the projects for these anus assholes, they mysteriously just gone. I had nothing to do with that. No hand in that whatsoever. That's not my forte. You know, if I had been a handler, I'd have put those people to work for me. They wouldn't have much of a choice. Be either work for me or you're gone. But the powers that be ain't going to allow that. They usually just confiscate their equipment and they kind of mysteriously just gone. Who knows where. Kind of like those scientists just here a while back. But anyway, just imagine this. I'm not a bad person. But don't try to hurt me. Don't try to catch me. I stay to myself. I'm not out there bothering nobody. Have no reason to. But just imagine, and I don't know this for a fact, but just imagine if they took a serial killer with the same kind of gifts and abilities, if you want to call them that, a curse, whatever you want to call it, and they put them in the projects, doing everything I was doing. Then that person gets away. Couldn't you imagine some of the crap they could get by with? You know, I always believed, and I still think this way, you know, with this strange abilities I have and how they've been tweaked and heightened and kind of turned up almost to the max, I would no more use that to harm any living soul. I'm just glad, even though I'm kind of boxed in, it's still being as free as I can be. Now, if you had a chance to talk to one of these handlers of mine, they would either, one, deny all of it, or two, they would tell you that I'm a mad dog killer, and that's not true. But they just wait for me to do something really stupid, and I'm not going to. Yes, I do have these abilities. Yes, I was in several projects, almost every one of them. I learned a lot of different things that I could add to my abilities to keep me safe. But would I ever use them for bad? No. I would like to try to be like everybody else. But anyway, there was an incident, and I had no clue it was planned. I was in my room at Long Island asleep. Well, one night late, and I mean, it had to have been really late, like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They sounded code red, which means something catastrophic was happening. Well, my first thought was, no problem. I'll just vacate the place real quick. Easy enough once I get out of my cell. That ain't hard, 'cause I can manipulate the locks without even touching them. But my conscience weighed in, and even though there was a bunch of sick individuals in there, I just couldn't just vanish out of there and leave them behind. Don't ask me why. And I'm glad I didn't, because it was a test. I was the only one that didn't know. I mean, they was going down to the wire. I mean, every T was crossed, every I was dotted. I mean, they was doing things by textbook to make it look like there was a catastrophe happening. They even went as far, and I could hear this, vert, vert, vert. All the lights went out. The generator kicked in, but that only ran a few lights, so it's pretty dim in there. They come running to my cell, opened the cell up, and told me they needed my help. Of course, all this chaos going around. They gave me a diagram, and they gave me a small map-like deal. Looked like it was kind of hand-drawn. And told me that I had to go shut the computer down. That somehow it was overloading. If not, Long Island wasn't going to be there very long. There was going to be one hell of a meltdown, and it wasn't going to be pretty. So I headed down the hallway. People was running past me, bumping into me, and I kept going because I knew I only had so many minutes, according to what I was told. Well, I finally got to the level I needed. Ended up in the room, the control room, where I needed to be. I happened to look, and the only thing I could find was a fire extinguisher. So I'm like, there's got to be, this is no military base, there's got to be a fire axe. So I looked and looked. The last place I would think to look is in a goddamn locker that was marked fire. But sure enough, mysteriously there was one in there. So I went back into the control room, and I'm looking at this hand-drawn diagram, trying to figure this out. Tell me which wires to pull. And they had warned me that if you let any of those wires touch, there wouldn't even be a second. Computer would blow up in my face. So I'm looking at this thing, and it don't make sense. Whoever did this did it upside down, to my way of thinking. I'm looking at this thing, I'm looking at the wires, I'm looking for breakers, anything I can find to kill the power in there. The sprinkler system was kicked on. There was smoke. It was a mess. So I'm running out of time. The floor in the room I was in had about a half an inch of water in it from them damn sprinklers. They kicked on and they was really kicking out the water, so dim lighting, water, and I'm standing in it amongst a bunch of electricity. Not a smart choice. So I decided, hell with trying to cut those wires. All I have to do is start smashing the control panel. So I took the axe and started smashing the control panels. Figured that'll kill something. Maybe even me, who the hell knows. Needless to say, there were lots of sparks. At one time I thought the computer was going to catch on fire because it was a kind of a flash spark. Damn near blinded me. Well, I decided to take one more whack at her. That was the last thing I remember. I don't know how much voltage was through there, but I hit that son of a bitch and it blew me across the room into the puddle of water on the floor. That's all I remember. Hitting that floor, bouncing off that concrete. A few days later, I woke up in sick bay. Guy come in there, and I won't use his name. Besides that, he ain't worthy to be on this channel. This piece of shit. He come and told me how many millions of dollars that I had destroyed. I said, where in the hell was you at? Let me guess. You was like a cockroach when somebody flips on a light. You was looking for a place to get. I said, don't tell me about it. I said, it must have worked because we're still here. He goes, you know, I never have liked you. I said, well, feelings mutual. He goes, you don't breathe a word of this to nobody. I said, who in the hell am I going to tell? Who in the hell would believe me? He goes, if I had my way, you wouldn't be standing here right now. I'd have just took you out while you was passed out. What you mean knocked out? There's a difference. My hands were blackened. My hair all over me was singed. I was chilled to the bone. And I know why they keep places like that cool. It keeps disease and stuff like that down, but damn. I don't like cold. Well, anyway, I was getting a little ticked off. My eyes were changing colors, just like a damn kaleidoscope. Guy went for the door, and all he heard was the lock, and he goes, open the door. Like, I don't think so. We ain't done talking. He goes, well, you do know you was set up. What do you mean I was set up? He goes, that was a mock drill. But you tore the shit out of a bunch of stuff. I'd sue me. Take it out of my wages that I ain't getting. Better than that, take it out of the wages of my mom and dad that's getting paid for me to be here. I ain't getting none out of it. So he reached in his front pants area there, pulled out a 9mm, slid it back, shot one up in the pipe, turned it loose, clicked the safety off, turned around, aimed that right at my head. I tell you, I got one question for you. before you put that gun in your waistband, and before you pulled it out and loaded a shell up into the pipe, did you check and make sure there wasn't nothing in the barrel? You're just trying to be smart. No, I'm just asking you a question. I want to see how smart you are. Did you check the barrel? I know you'd like to shoot me, but the real question is, do you know for a fact that barrel ain't plugged? He goes, you gonna unlock the door? I said, you gonna pull the trigger or you gonna check that barrel? It ain't gonna be me one get shot. I think if I was you, I'd have a seat right there and I'd pull the clip out of that son of a bitch and I'd check and see if there's something in the barrel. He just kind of looked at me and looked at the gun in his hand. He pulled the clip out, pulled the shell out of the pipe. That dumbass was trying to look in that barrel. Sure enough, there was a whole bunch of paper wadded up in there. That's how much a gun would have blew apart in his face. He'd pulled that trigger. But that's to show you how nice I am. I could have taunted him and got him to pull the trigger and watched the stupid fool get shot by his own damn gun. But, like George Jones said, that old song, choices. I wanted him to know that the whole time he was running his mouth, that gun barrel was getting filled with paper. Wet paper. And he had no clue I was doing it. Until I told him. Needless to say, the next time he come in there, he was prepared. He just looked at me and he goes, you're just one devious bastard. No. I figured this kind of shit you was gonna pull. That's how stupid you are. Why would you come in a room and I could bounce you around this room like a basketball without even touching you? I could have pulled every piece of hair off of your body and not even touched you. But I didn't. So you always want to keep that in mind. You know, with these curses, if you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it, gifts, great responsibility. I mean, just because you have the ability to do something, there's other ways of dealing with things. That's only a last resort. I know, you're thinking, well, they was your captors. Yeah. But you know, that man thought about that for a long time after that. Probably still thinking about it. How anytime I wanted him, I could have got him. Because they created me, but they had no clue how smart and how powerful I had gotten over the years. And gotten stronger since then. And I've learned a little bit of wisdom too, which has saved my ass. So anyway, you know, now can you imagine aliens do the same thing that I do, cryptids do the same thing. We're all interdimensional beings. Now comes the fun part. We were creating a hologram, so to speak. I was in my head and creating creatures that looked nothing like you've ever seen before. You'd probably thought it was some kind of a demon. First, it come out like a sheet of paper. Then it would look like it was kind of like it was inflating, coming into our reality. At first, it was kind of see-through. Then the longer you could keep that image going and projecting it, you was feeding that thing. You was bringing it further into our reality. So you got to understand something. In these other realities, none of those beings over there, creatures, whatever you want to call them, they're not solid like me and you here on this earth. Because they're interdimensional. They don't need to be solid. But in order to bring something from another reality into our plane of existence, reality, whatever you want to call it, it has to go through a transition. If you can't keep that going, feeding it, mentally stimulating it, creating it basically, and basically your frequency, you got to keep it at one level and slowly add up while maintaining it at the same time. I know it sounds like a pain in the ass. It was for a long time until I learned to master it. Then it becomes three-dimensional. Then it becomes dimensional. Now, once it's all the way in shape, it's not see-through anymore. Now it's in our reality, controlled in a way by our reality, which means it's solid. Now, if it wants to, it could ring out and reach its hand out and choke you, slap you around, kill you. I don't know what they did with those things. Sometimes there would be freak accidents and it would go berserk in there. Sometimes it'd wander out on the beach there in the wooded areas. They'd have to send a team to go track it down and capture it. I don't know what they did after that. They probably took it and turned it loose someplace else. Hell, they might have turned it loose in Iran, Iraq, who the hell knows? Or some jungle, who knows? But if you couldn't keep the frequency going, it would just dissipate into nothingness. Meaning, it would shrink back into like a jello, and then just be gone. It would just go out into hyperspace. But anyway, there was creatures created, and some of those are pretty goddamn weird. I mean, it's hard to imagine some of these things. And like I said, I don't know what they've done with them. I have no clue. Never was told. It was on a need-to-know basis, and they figured I didn't need to know. I wasn't going to poke too much. I figured it was something they wanted me to know. And there was times when they would leave a briefcase there on purpose, knowing that I was going to look in there. But if it was something they didn't want me to know, they didn't say nothing, and I wasn't allowed to ask nothing. That's how that went. Now, imagine this. You got somebody with all this mental equipment. Couldn't you imagine what could be done? I can. I've lived it. Wasn't long after that, and I started having nightmares about creatures I was imagining, and they would appear. It would just become natural. And I'd have to literally shut myself down to make that thing disappear. How would you like to be laying in bed some night? Just say at home, or maybe you're at a church camp or a Boy Scout camp, and you're laying there sleeping, and all of a sudden you start having one of them nightmares. And everybody else wakes up and sees this thing starting to materialize. And then you wake up and stop the process, and it just vanishes into thin air. And everybody else is screaming, hollering, running around like they're crazy, and you're the only one there that's just sitting there calm. Yeah, you can imagine. Wouldn't have been a pretty sight. Then I would have been taken someplace and held for however many days until these assholes decided to come get me. So I always had to be careful. Plus, going into those deep sleeps, they could control me. I've learned how to circumvent that. I take a few naps now and then, but I don't go in that deep sleep. They've had control of me long enough. I think they got enough out of me. Now, there is times that nighttime I might be out. Maybe I didn't get the chickens locked up and forgot. And I walk out there at nighttime, lock chickens up, or I go out there to check on them, shine a light in there, make sure they're okay. My wife be watching me on a security camera in case I need backup, or I need the dog or the gun. And she sees a shadow figure darting around behind me, trying to sneak up. You know, she has seen that. Of course, she thought it was funny as hell. And it was when you turn around and rewatched it. It's almost like your shadow said, fuck you, you stink, I don't want to be around you, bye. He stay off away from me, but he's still going from one shadow to the next, stalking you. It's a hell of a thing, but I've learned to live with it. But anyway, it's just things have really gotten good for me now. Glad to be away from those things. I mean, I've seen a lot in there, and I've seen things that most people couldn't fathom. And I've done lots of things that people couldn't imagine either, but I did do it. Well, trying to maintain a home life after what was going on just a few days, it was a hell of a juggling act. I got so good at it that the moment I stepped foot on the property at home, I could just flip a switch. But it was always still up here. Just living a double life, and it was a hell of a juggling act. If I had to do it all over again and start like today, I don't know that I could have handled it. But see, as a young kid, your mind is a lot more applicable than an older person's. Take an old person, it's hard for them to readapt to new, whereas a kid, they can adapt and overcome. and just accept, okay, this is the way it is now. But they built me that way, where I'd be applicable, and I could roll with the changes. Whatever was through my way, I could get through it, get by it, go around it, whatever. Keep it going. Well, I started getting really frustrated the older I got because I wanted to explore these hidden talents and do a little bit of getting even for all the pain and suffering they caused. But my heart wouldn't let me always do it. It's like having a good angel on one shoulder and a bad angel on the other. They're both whispering in your ear. Which one do you listen to? But now I ain't gonna say I haven't done little small things when people aggravated me, just to screw with them. But they asked for it. Minor things, like they set a hammer up on the shelf, and they're working there by a bench, and that hammer just mysteriously fell off that shelf and hit them in the frickin' head. Wasn't enough to kill them or anything, but it made a hell of a knot on their head. Just things like that. So, you know, I ain't saying I'm perfect, because I'm not, trust me. Working with so many people, some of them tried to treat you good, and others were mean, devious devils, assholes. But I did learn a lot of things. And I pulled a lot of shit in there. The older I got, the more I started trying to buckle down and do what they said, unless they really tried to hurt me, then the gloves come off. But I started realizing I was going to have to be there one way or the other. I started figuring out a plan, dreams of what I would do after the project, not knowing what they had in store for me. It's kind of like a bad relationship. You know, whether you be a man or a woman, whichever the case may be, and the opposite sex, you start hanging around them and think, well, they're pretty cool. And then one day, you decide it's not going so good, so you want out. Well, your other half decides that if they can't have you, nobody will. That was the project. So, would they have mopped my ass? Damn right they would, and they tried several times. Almost succeeded several times, too. They also caused a lot of accidents. Now I'm living proof of that, and I got the scars that look like laugh lines. They ain't laugh lines. Those scars. Bad scars. So, when you hear about people talking about, I seen a dog man and he walked behind a tree and he's gone. He opened a portal. Either went into the tree, or he just opened one up and poof, gone. Or he went in one and showed up a mile behind you, going the other way. I've done that myself. But like I said, there's so many different ways of doing this here that I just started doing things the way I wanted to, that I was comfortable with, but I had to learn every way possible, whether it's a Jacob's ladder or whatever. But at least I was taught all these different ways, so I'd have no problem getting away or backing into a wall. They even gone so far as one time in there, around this time, everybody was hustling and they was checking everything, pulling papers, shutting computers down, hiding shit, and I was like, what the hell is that now? They said, well, there's a group coming here today, and we need you to be gone. I said, well, how much do they know? Well, they don't really have anything confirmed. We got a leak and we need to plug it. But in the meantime, you need to make yourself gone. I said, what you guys doing? Sending me back in time? Or am I supposed to just go and take care of it the way I want to? Which is open a portal and step into the wall and just sit there and watch and listen. They said, we don't care, we just want you gone. We don't want to fire up the chair or any of the other stuff, so as long as you stay out of sight until they're gone, because they're wanting you. They said, we've had you long enough and it's their turn. Well, hell, I already got used to these dumbasses. Why would I want to go start all over? So I opened up a portal into the wall and stepped into the wall where I could sit and listen and watch, but they couldn't see and hear me. There was a whole shitload of these people. What about 15 or 20 people? Come in there and they had their own guards with them. They tore that place upside down, trying to find any trace of me or where I went. Of course, they didn't have all the information they needed, so it made my job a lot easier. All I did was just stay quiet. Well, they made a bunch of threats, and they was going to tell this person how this project shut down and blah, 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 you know. Kind of like a debt collector, you know. All these bullshit, you know, scare tactics. After they left, I stayed hid for another hour, make sure somebody didn't come back. I stepped out and about scared that poor bastard to death that was standing there looking around trying to figure out where I went. He was like, well, we're probably going to have to move you to another part of the facility that's a lot more secure. And of course, being a wise ass, I was like, damn, I'm just getting used to that room too. He kind of chuckled, thought that was funny, but then come a new day. They would come in and tell me a few things, and then I would go into a deep trance, kind of slip in and out of consciousness, and would view other areas. And I said, you know, it's a lot easier if I just do it the simple way. Just tear a hole in the fabric and you just walk over and look through the hole. Well, again, they wanted things done their way, which was the hard way, and I was expected to deliver. Well, then they got the bright idea that the place was going to be being watched. See if I'd come topside, and maybe they'd try to snatch me then, or hell, who knows what they was planning on doing. So they sent me to another place in the Midwest. It's an abandoned place now. The place is still there. But it was another military base. They held me there for probably the next 6, 8 weeks before they moved me again. I had all kinds of fun there. They had these underground missiles and in these silos. And while I was there, I always thought it'd be funny just to start the counter up, see what happened. Watch them scramble trying to figure out what the hell tripped their trigger. Well, after about 3 or 4 times doing that, they finally caught on that I was the one doing it. They even start wearing that damn helmet again. Leather helmet thing to block everything. That wasn't no fun. But they said it was for their good and for my own safety. Well, I knew what I was doing. I was having fun with them. Giving them back a little bit of their own medicine. Let them see what it's like to fight against the time of clock. That somebody started counting down, and that silo was going to come open. That missile was going to take off. Of course, they didn't have no warhead on them, but still, it freaked a lot of people out in high power. It was funny. I did used to get to go hiking while I was there, hiking around. You know, they always had 4 or 5 guards around me. If I'd have stepped a foot off that trail when we was hiking, they'd have splattered my ass. Left me for worm dirt. But eventually, when things cooled off, they took me back up to Long Island. So then they got the bright idea that they wanted to see, almost like start over again, they wanted to see if we could send a message from one mind across country using the facility to push it, make it a lot stronger. So instead of it being real weak when it got there for the receiver to pick up, it's like they just loved electricity. But anyway, we did that a few times, and I won't say the name of the place, but there was kind of a misfire. I got sidetracked on purpose. It took out this whole city's electricity. I mean, it just shut it down. Yeah, I paid for that too. I thought it was funny though, but you know, it's kind of like having a brain fart. You know, you're sitting there thinking about a problem, and you're fixing it in your head, and all of a sudden you have a brain fart, and everything you're thinking about just goes psst. That's what happened. I won't say what caused that, but it was just a slight brain fart. That's all it took. Kind of like a hiccup. Then they took me up to Canada, up around Quebec, to another facility up there. And showed them how to open up a portal, create a portal, however you want to say it. And those people up there were so fascinated that they didn't want to travel through time because they were scared to. But you know how you show movies and people come to your house and they sit and watch movies, eat popcorn, drink soda, and shoot the shit? These people were so fascinated I could open up a portal at a wall and they could watch a battle from the Civil War or watch buffalo run across prairie. See all these different figures from a long time ago that they was fascinated as hell. But they didn't let me outside too much. Guess they didn't want me to know exactly where I was at. But it was an experience. Years later, my dad went up to Canada and up there doing some fishing with some boys that he worked with. When he brought the film home where he filmed a lot of fishing and touring around a little bit. And there were some of those places I remember being there. I ain't saying I kept my mouth shut. But just little things, you had to really watch out for. Do I think about some of that sometimes? Every day. Some of it not in a good way. Then again, some of it not too bad, I guess. It was an experience. But I always wondered, out of all the people in the world, why me? I guess God never had a choice. They created me, so I guess that's my answer. Even though it don't sound like a real comforting thought, but here we are anyway. They was always having me do something, sending me someplace. But I'll tell you straight up, that chair, the Montauk chair they call it, I'm just going to try to word it as best as I can. That chair seemed to take a life of its own on. And what do I mean by that? There'd be time that the power was shut down on it, but that damn chair would glow. Sometimes you'd look in there or walk into the room, and that chair would be fading in and out. There was also times when there wasn't no electric charge going to it, and some of it had a pulse, putting out a frequency. It was some of the weirdest sounds. Kind of sound like if you can imagine, a violinist playing a violin and a cello inside of a tornado. I don't know if you can imagine that, but if you can, that's what it would be like. Sometimes you walk in there, you'd hear that frequency, and that's what it put you in the mind of. An eerie, hypnotic music. That the music did not even make no sense. But, and when the chair wasn't in use, it was kind of creepy to think that thing almost took a life of its own on. Always wondered, just say 100 years from then, what would that chair be? What would it be doing? Would it take on so much of a life of its own that it would just do whatever it wanted when it wanted? But sometimes it did. To give you a for instance, there was an alarm went off one night, and I seen all these people scrambling, heading down to that room where they kept the chair. Finally, they opened the door, and I went with them. Got down there, and this chair, it kind of reminds you of a frickin' Ouija board with the damn pendulum on it. They turned the lights on in there. It's kind of foggy, smoky looking in there, and real dim light, so you had to wait for that shit to clear before anybody would enter, but they was looking through the windows watching. It didn't even have no juice hooked up to it. And shit would appear in that frickin' chair. That's why I said it took on a life of its own. Or sometimes they would set something in that chair, turn their back, and turn back around, The chair was there, but whatever it was in that chair was just gone. That's why I said it did take on a life of its own. I don't know how it did it, I don't understand, but it could be creepy. But now when I was strapped in the chair, I really didn't think about nothing other than where I was supposed to be heading. But when that chair wasn't in use, it scared the hell out of everybody. Even the people that supposedly created it. Which I don't think they did. I think that was alien tech. That's my personal belief. There's too many things that point to it. But anyway, that's just a little bit about that. There was also a safeguard, which was a long pole, probably about 500-600 foot long. It had been run down through the center of the floor in the basement, the lowest level, and it generated electricity from the earth, free electricity. Where'd that come from? Tesla's notes. You think they wasn't spying on him? Shit, everybody was spying on him. FBI, all of them. And that thing, you couldn't shut it down. It took on a life of its own, and there wasn't no way to shut it down. It was pulling power, producing power. Same thing they, in the pyramids. Those were not a place where the pharaohs lived as a residence. Those were power stations. For what? For the UFOs. And for the magicians. Now, to give you a clue, in this book they call the Bible, they talked about the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was a capacitator and a generator, along with being a weapon. That's all it was. In Egypt, those arks, a lot of your pharaohs and people had them. Where the hell do you think Moses got the tech from? He was raised as an Egyptian until he denied the faith and decided to go back to being a Hebrew. So he would have had the knowledge and knew what it was really used for. But how do you control people? I'm going to show you the power of the Lord. Open that box. Somebody would walk up there and look, and all of a sudden, they was electrocuted. There you go. Now you know what the Bible really is, along with what the Ark of the Covenant is. They said that's where God was in there, that's where he would be close to his people. Bullshit. It was a goddamn weapon. Plain and simple. It could cause a building to crumble like an earthquake was happening. It could do all kinds of things. But anyway, it wasn't nothing really special until you get a bunch of idiots that was to control people. Well, that's the Lord in that box. What was he, a fucking jack in the box? Good, put one of those fucking hats on there with a pointed hat with a ball on the end of it, make him look like a fucking dunce. It's common sense. I went there and I seen how they was built. I watched them being constructed. I've even once they was constructed, got to go inside and see how they really work. Do you know on the side, on the inside of those, there's some of those hieroglyphs, and you see this long, cylindrical looking deal, and it has two wires, and then a wire joining the two wires. Now, if you think about that, what have you seen that looks something like that? A glass bowl, jar, whatever you want to call it, with two wires and a wire going across, and it's all copper. I'll give you a hint. A light bulb. Well, where'd they plug it in? You don't have to. All you have to do is carry it and set it down. It'll light up the whole room. Remember Tesla was doing that kind of stuff? There you go. Tesla did the same thing. He had a long pole in the ground, and it was a round sphere on top. Then he would take light bulbs and go out and place them every so often. Then he'd sit back and watch, hoping, and sure enough, those light bulbs didn't have electricity hooked up to them, but it was attached to that pole with the cable. Free energy. So there's pyramids all over the place. South America, all over the place. There's even some here in the United States. You've probably been told they ain't, but there is. There's some in Georgia. They're all over the place. They're just hidden in forbidden places that you ain't supposed to go. But they are there. But that's what they were. They were just a big free energy powerhouse that the people there could use for free power, and the aliens was using it, drawing power to their ship, charging everything up. There you go. I got to see a lot of interesting things that people never get to see. Of course, the more you see, the more you get kind of burned out on the slide they tell you in school about history, because ain't nothing like they said, especially when you see the real thing. Been to many different realms. That was kind of freaky. There was even a case where I got to go back to World War II. That's how I learned that the Germans had been working with the aliens since after World War I. Until there was bad blood and Hitler lost the war. The good ones decided to kind of help the United States out. Well, there you go. See, our history ain't what you've been told. But know this. There's lots of things out there that goes on. There's even mystery spots. Vortexes, they call them. They're paranormal hotspots. There's one, I can't remember what it's called, but it's an old miner's cabin. And two people the same height. They stand back to back and they start walking. One will get shorter and the other one gets taller. They start walking and they pass each other. This one over here gets shorter, this one over here gets taller. Called the mystery spot. Check it out. It's a real place. Then you got some of these places where there's boulder fields. And this one particular place, you can go out there where they will rent you or sell you a hammer, and you go out there and play music on these rocks. Indians knew about all this stuff. They tried to stay away from some of those spots because all kind of weird stuff going on. Then you want to go talk about places like the Superstition Mountains, Skinwalker Ranch, just to name a couple. Those are places where the veil is so thin that in certain areas you can stand. It's like watching a movie projector. You're looking back at different events in time and space and places. Of course, you're not supposed to know all that, and I'm not supposed to be telling all that, but here we are. I'm talking and you're listening. I really don't see anything wrong with that, but the powers that be don't like that idea. Just like what's really going to be funny is they're going to open up a can of worms that's already been cracked open. And it's going to set a catastrophe into motion that ain't going to be good for nobody. You ever heard the old folks talking about, when you was a kid growing up? That powder keg is sitting there with the top off and somebody's sitting there with a match. Just that close to always going to start a holy war. Well, the real holy war ain't what you think. It ain't going to be like us against Israel. No. It's going to be all these religious people in all these countries, including the USA. When it comes out that the Anunnaki and aliens created us and that they're the real gods, that's going to blow a lot of people's mind. It's going to piss a lot of people off. Some of them probably will take their own lives because they just won't want to accept that. That'll be what the Holy War is really about. Some of these people that put all their stock in a God as being one versus a ton of Anunnaki and aliens as being the true gods, it's going to be a mess. But, as with anything, once that can of worms gets open and that stink gets out, you can't cram it back in. It's out there. Some of us know all this. Others will have to learn. Others are kind of on the fence about it, but don't make a difference what side of the fence you're on. It's just fact. So, then they was going to give me another 2 weeks off. See, when I would go there, I'd be there for months. But it only seemed like a few days. Because they would bring me right back to the same spot as when I'd left. It's confusing as hell. Did I ever get used to it? No. I was... First few days, either at home or first few days at the project, I was scatterbrained. My brain was still back here when I was up here. When I was over here, my mind was over here. try juggling that. So to deal with all that and keep a sane mind, you had to try to separate the two realities. And these dipshits keep playing with the portals and realms. It's gonna be a mess. Couldn't you imagine that? You're in the bathroom taking a crap, reading the Sunday afternoon paper, and a frickin' pterodactyl, because they bring these realms together, flies at your frickin' mirror, hits the wall behind you, tears a hole in the drywall, ends up in there in your kitchen floor, eating your damn Cheerios. It's gonna be a mess. And that's just one scenario. What about leprechauns, unicorns, Bigfoot, Dogman, all this other stuff? Well, hell, you'd be running along across your yard playing a game of football, and you're running, hoping somebody throws you the ball because you're almost at the goalpost. You take 2 steps, now you're in the land of the lost. Yeah, reality ain't what you think it is. But they keep tampering with it, and that's what's going to happen. Nighttime, you can't see those things, them portals and stuff. You walk into one, not even know it until you done got in there and sucked through there like a vacuum cleaner. But that was the world I existed in. I've seen way too much. But here we are. So think about that for a little bit. If you got any questions, just ask me. Providing that's a real question and not somebody being a smart ass. Because I won't deal with smart asses. It's just either me to flush you when you're going to be a smart ass to me, because I'm not trying to be a smart ass here. But I don't have no patience for trolls. I'll answer about any question with the exception of names. I will answer most any question. So, it's up to you. Go to my post section. There's a new post in there. I try to put in a few things periodically. Check out my shorts. I just added some more shorts today. New ones. And just go and check everything out. Go back and watch some of the other videos and give me a thumbs up. Give me a shout out. It won't cost you nothing. It'll help the channel and me by knowing that maybe some video touched somebody or sparked a question. Well, this is Henry, and I'm going to sign out for tonight. And like I said, go check out some of the videos and the posts and lives and some of the other true stories I'll talk about. That's in the video section. Check out the shorts, and I'll catch you on the next one. Y'all have a good night.